Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to try a version of this wood grain paper scene. Very simple scene on a piece of the vintage style of paper. Slightly different kind of emotional feel to this one over this wood grain, kind of a warmer wood grain paper. I love the look of both, but it's always kind of a mystery as to what kind of the emotional impact a different surface is going to have with a similar composition and even techniques. All right, so I'm applying some of my white pigment ink onto a 1-inch hole punch for my sun or moon. I don't know what it is. Left to the interpretation of the viewer. Let's see, this one's going on a little bit of a lighter area, so it looks like I better add a little bit more around the base of this one. The wood grain paper, I guess, is probably a little bit of a darker paper in some areas, so I think that looks pretty good right there. A little bit of a fade out at the bottom where I didn't add quite as much of the white pigment ink. Okay, now as I've stated on other videos and my previous one today, you just have to check your inks and find the ones that seem to work the best for you in terms of getting the best impression results. So on this type of paper too, just like the wood grain, this is a printed surface on here. Even in the lighter areas that's not bare paper, they've used some sort of, I don't know, kind of a brownish black tone in there. You know, it's a 4-color printing process, I would think. It could be 3, but what you're doing is you're trying to get your ink to adhere, to transfer and adhere to the, you know, whatever surface you're using. So, you know, you just have to kind of play around with some of the different papers and ink combinations to find out which ones work the best for you. Now, you know, the simple thing, unless you're going to be coloring with alcohol inks, and there's other ways you can do that, you know, to get around what I'm about to say, but alcohol inks, you really wouldn't color a solvent ink impression because it'll put the solvent ink back into solution, and you know, it can result in some blurry impressions, but you can spray seal it and, you know, go over with alcohol inks. Hold down, press and hold down, you know, accordingly. I went for a little bit of a longer impression this time than on my wood grain paper, just to allow more of that stays on ink to transfer and to start setting up, meaning dry, on the surface. So, you know, there's still, you know, a decent amount of ink left on my stamp here, but I would say a pretty good amount of it transferred, looking at the, you know, the impression here. Okay, let's go for our additional impressions here. This is just a real simple composition if you haven't looked at my previous one on the wood grain. Well, I just showed you, but in terms of the lesson. All right, let's see here. Looks like stamp my moon a little bit more to the right in this one. But I kind of like that with that branch just kind of touching that moon. Fisherman 2 here. And I don't know, I find that with these kind of more simple styles of compositions, or the ones, I don't know, on the wood grain paper and these pre-printed papers, I mean, the quotes look, you know, go with any kind of paper, but I don't know, it just seems like the less I do, you know, the more simple a design is, it just seems like the word stamps really come in handy in terms of adding that extra kind of dynamic element. I mean, the word stamp itself isn't like super dynamic, but just in terms of creating like another focal point, you know, visual dynamics, you know, creating a dialogue between the viewer and the scene. You know, when you give them something in there, you know, like a word stamp, it gives people something to do. Then they're kind of wandering around, within the piece looking at it. Okay, so just as with this previous lesson right here, all this little area down here is kind of toned in. So this extra shadowing, anchors our objects down into the scene a little bit more, or a lot more, actually, depending on, how dark you make this. But what you want to do is shadows. Sometimes there's really hard shadows, but I like to transition them from a little bit darker right around our object. And then as I move away from the object, I have a lighter application of media, be it ink or in this case colored pencils like that. See how it's kind of sitting in the scene a little bit more. And then what you can do is you can kind of follow suit by adding some shading work going up into my image here. Okay. In this case, the mystic trees, like so. Now in this scene right here, I don't think I'm gonna go for those like super bright tones like that. I don't know, maybe. Let's see how it goes. That yellow looks pretty bright on that previous one. But I was thinking maybe I should go for something a little bit more muted. I don't know. Like right here, here's a little bit of a duller yellow right here. So I can go for, like something maybe like this right here, this combination. And we'll see how it goes. I just think this is a little more antique, so maybe we wouldn't have something like so bright, in terms of yellows and oranges, like on this really warm tone scene. So, but I don't know. You can always test it out. It's, we're just kind of theorizing about how something might look. But until you do it and then apply it on top of the paper that we're using, it's we can never really tell for sure. So, I don't know, just always kind of experiment. I see my, I think of my workspace here as kind of like a laboratory. And I think when you go into it with that kind of, I don't know, sensibility, point of view, what are labs, for? They're, for experimentation, right? And to carry out, kind of investigations as far as, what something might do or how something might work. So I think it leaves us kind of more open-minded to trying different things and, kind of not being so judgmental in terms of, how something is looking at any given time, because you're there to learn. We want good-looking stuff and results, but, I feel we get that, more of that, and learn at the same time with this idea of, kind of, nonstop, kind of experimenting. Overall, I'm talking about. Don't have to. Everything doesn't have to be, an experiment, but you kind of want to keep kind of playing around with things and keeping an open mind. Okay, so adding some of these leaves as if they're on tops of the rocks and floating in the water like that. I think that kind of duller yellow looks pretty good. And here's a tan. It's probably, something like this color down here. A little bit lighter, so maybe I'll use it slightly more sparingly than the yellow, of course. The yellow kind of looks like a mustard to me. These little dots down in here could represent some leaves floating in the water, or it could represent the lighting from this sun or moon on the water's surface. So kind of dual type of, I don't know, whatever, visual representation. All right, so this is a little bit more of a narrow, this is a 0.7 millimeter paint pen. Adding some lighting into my trees. It kind of defines the lighting a little bit more in terms of light source and reflected light when you do this. And then you can add some of this on top of your rocks. And I'm just illuminating, you know, the rocks that are already illuminated in the design itself. So you're just kind of reiterating what I've done with that design. Okay, a little bit of highlighting on our fishing boat so that they are also being affected by the that lighting right there. How about a little bit more lighter tones around the side of the tree facing the light? Okay, scene number 2. Tell me which one you like better. Do you like them the same? I don't know. This one has a different feel to it, of course, with that heavy kind of, antiquing, I guess. But I think the spirit of them is a little bit different. Let me do something right here. Let me grab maybe not go for the super large orange here, you know, in the 3 millimeter pen, but here's the 0.7 millimeter again with the extra fine acrylic paint. Let's get a little bit, let's twist this a little bit more. Here I'll put some smaller applications, subtle, I guess would be the word, applications of this orange in here. I think that looks pretty decent. And we're experimenting here, right? Let's try a little bit of green too. In those deciduous trees, you know, you often see, you know, some residual green tones. Well, this one's a light green, so it's not going to represent anything like a, you know, a deep, you know, whatever, summertime leaf color or something like that. So it kind of harmonizes a little bit, but I don't know if you can see that little tinge of green in there. So a little bit different. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of a moss on some of these rocks or something of that sort. This might be cool with a little bit of a mist in here as well. Let me try that. I don't know if I've done that on this paper. I don't know. I've been playing around with it now for probably a couple months now at this point in time, but let's see what this might look like in here. Since we have this moon or sun in that little bit of a kind of a foggy kind of atmosphere, let's do a little bit with this reflected moisture as well. I think that looks pretty good. So that right there just kind of adds that extra little atmospheric touch to it. And it creates a visual dialogue between this soft light source right here and this soft reflected light down here. You always go into it with a very dry application, okay? And it'll serve you very well. Don't go into it with a really super wet, sopping paint where you just touch it and boom, you know, you get a big kind of slathering of ink. If you get that, you know, just wipe it off with a clean part of your cotton ball. 100% cotton, okay? So this is where I put a little bit of there as well. So you had a little bit of a kind of atmospheric touch to it. So we've added in a very abbreviated version of this technique right here, and I think it's served us pretty decently. So a lot of little techniques, but really fast techniques in this quick card right here. And then you'd mat it and, get it on kind of a nice stiff cardstock of some sort, or a folded, card base, and you'd be all set. All right, so all comparison contrast right there, and let's take a look at this piece and take a look at what it looks like. I think I want to do this one on a composition on doing some photo stamping. I think that would be really cool. So that one will be coming up next, I think. Okay, if you like these videos and channel in general, hope you hit the like button, support it. Thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.